What's poppin', players? In the culture of hip hop, it's always been the same. Rappers want to be ball players and ball players want to be rappers. So I got to thinking, who would my favorite ball player be in hip hop? Took me down a rabbit hole and I came up with a list. It consists of an athlete, the song that represents their game or their attitude, and the artist whose song it is. The athletes were picked either by having nicknames or championships. There's only one rule. You're part of a group and you didn't make a solo project, you possibly didn't make the list. Other than that, there are a few exceptions. But let's get started. I'm Gold Ray. This is the Ballin MCs. Now, first on the list, he could be considered your favorite ball player's favorite ball player. He also could be considered your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. Who is the answer? That's it. Allen Iverson. When he showed up to the court with his hair twisted up like the Superman lover, Redman showed up to the studio, the producer asking, "Do you need some practice?" He say, "Practice? Put on the beat. It's time for some action." First up on the list, Allen Iverson, Redman, time for some action. Y'all got it? Let's get to it. So they say it's been 50 years of hip hop. So I remember always seeing a picture of Willis Reed walking out the tunnel, 1973, when the Knicks won the championship and he won Finals MVP. Now, being from Youngstown, Ohio, I possibly didn't, or I ain't gonna say possibly, I didn't hear the origins of hip hop all the way up until the song Rapper's Delight. And from my understanding, DJ Casanova Fly is responsible for writing the majority of the rap. So next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Willis Reed, DJ Casanova Fly, Rapper's Delight. Next up on the list, Spencer Haywood. Spencer Haywood was the first athlete to challenge going straight from high school to the pros. You're going to have to look up his story, very in depth on what they did to him. But he was trying to send a message that why should we have to go to college before we go to the professionals when you can join the military at 18 and go serve your country. Melly Mel was responsible for writing the last verse on the song The Message, which still stands true to this day. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Spencer Haywood, Melly Mel, The Message. Next up on the list, Lucia Harris. Yes, I do have women on the list. She was drafted into the NBA from my understanding, so she must have been able to play on par with her male contemporaries. Roxanne Shante. When she came into rap, she was definitely rapping on par with her male contemporaries. Roxanne's Revenge. Next up on the list are the Ballin MCs, Lucia Harris, Roxanne Shante, Roxanne's Revenge. Next up on the list, Wilt the Stilt Chamberlain. He ruled the record books in the 60s, some records that still stand to this day. He was also known for scoring over 20,000 times. So should we say the great adventures of Slick Rick? Or maybe we'll just say the ruler's back. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Wilt the Stilt Chamberlain, Slick Rick, the ruler's back. Next up on the list, Bernard King. He was a big deal back in the day. Or should we say, Mr. Big Stuff? Pause. Or is that a pause? I don't know. I'm 51 years old, so I don't know when I be watching Cam and Mace with the pause, when the pause, but Heavy D. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Bernard King, Heavy D, Mr. Big Stuff. Next up on the list, number 7, Oscar Robertson, known as the first Mr. Triple Double. And I'm sure when he was putting on a performance, he used to move the crowd. Rakim, who was the first rapper to change cadence in rap. Now I know it's Eric B. and Rakim, but for you youngsters that don't know, in the beginning of hip hop, it was the DJ, then the MC. So it would be Eric B. and Rakim, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and so on and so forth. Some of y'all gonna have to do your Googles and go back in history and look up some of the greats in ball and in hip hop. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Oscar Robertson, Rakim, Move the Crowd. Next up on the list, Earl the Pearl Monroe. When he scored on you, he looked at you like, how you like me now? Cool Mo Deep. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Earl the Pearl Monroe, Cool Mo D, How You Like Me Now. Next up on the list, Walt Clyde Frazier. He was so smooth, his theme song was Basketball, Curtis Blow. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Walt Clyde Frazier, Curtis Blow. They playing basketball. Next up on the list, John Stockton. And from what I heard from the point guards that used to have to play, his game was ice cold. Now, I watched him, and he was definitely assist leader. So should we say ice, ice, baby, vanilla ice? Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, John Stockton, vanilla ice, 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 baby. Next up on the list, Nate Tiny Archibald, who got a finals MVP. He made it look easy, or should we say easy does it? Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Nate Tiny Archibald, Easy E, easy does it. Next up on the list, Kenny Anderson. He was a hood legend. I mean, in Ohio, it wasn't no YouTube or Facebook, but he was the first point guard that reached Ohio that was that dude in the magazines and all that from New York. His game was ill, and I'm sure he gave you the blues if you had to guard him. Coogee Rap. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Kenny Anderson, Coogee Rap, Hill Street Blues. Next up on the list, Patrick Ewing, first pick of the New York Knicks. When he dunked on you, he looked at you like, MCs act like they don't know. Knowledge reigns supreme. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Patrick Ewing, KRS-One, MCs act like they don't know. Next up on the list, one exception, when Cheryl Swoops, Cynthia Cooper, Tina Thompson started the WNBA, they pushed it to 4 straight championships. So Cynthia Cooper, salt, Cheryl Swoops, pepper, and Tina Thompson, Spinderella. The song is Push It. Next up on the list, Grant Hill, when he got drafted to the Detroit Pistons. If I'm not mistaken, he led the team in points, rebounds, assists, and steals in 1 year. He was definitely the show. Doug E. Fresh. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Grant Hill, Dougie Fresh, the show. Next up on the list, Anthony Penny Hardaway. Now, in between Mike's hiatus, there emerged a star named Penny. He had the shoes, commercials, the little character. Should we say he had it made? Or I got it made. And he was special. Special ed. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Anthony Penny Hardaway, special ed. I got it made. Next up on the list, Jerry West. He went to 9 championships, so he kept going back and back and back to the grill. MC Search. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Jerry West, MC Search, back to the grill. Next up on the list, Cheryl Miller. And when she scored that 107, 108 points in high school, I'm sure the ball had to feel light as a rock. MC Light. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Cheryl Miller, MC Light, light as a rock. Next up on the list, Elgin Baylor, who, if I'm not mistaken, was the first black executive in any professional sports. And I'm sure there was definitely a fear that we would be a lot more of us in those positions, which this ain't that platform for that type of talk. So, fear of a black planet, Chuck D. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Elgin Baylor, Chuck D, Fear of a Black Planet. Chuck D, part of Public Enemy, if y'all want to go look up one of the exceptions of the list. Just for y'all to say, he was part of a group. Next up on the list, Lynette Woodard. She would steal the ball from you and look at you like, you can't play with my yo-yo. So next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Lynette Woodard, yo-yo, you can't play with my yo-yo. Don't try to play me out. Next up on the list, Clyde the Glide Drexler. And when he was up in Portland, and in the dunk contest, he would definitely put it down. When Bum B come and glide over your track, it's all better. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Clyde the Glide Drexler, Bum B, put it down. Next up on the list, Big Game James Worthy. In college, he was a big deal, and in the pros, he played his position and went and got him some rings for the Lakers. But in college, he used to R-U-L-E, Ja Rule. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, James Worthy, Ja Rule, R-U-L-E. Next up on the list, Lisa Leslie. When she used to walk on the court, be tying her shorts and looking around, she'd be like, "Who gonna check me, boo?" Rob Digger. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Lisa Leslie, Raw Digger, Who Gonna Check Me, Boo? Next up on the list, Candace Parker. Having a championship with 3 different teams, she must have brought some type of UNITY to every team that she was on. Queen Latifah. So next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Candace Parker, Queen Latifah, UNITY. I can't even say it without saying it like that. Next up on the list, Muggsy Bogues. His defense was hard like the base and too short. Life is too short. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Muggsy Bogues, Too Short. Life is too short. Next up on the list, the Iceman, George Gervin. And when he came through with that finger roll, he would look at you like, "You tried to block that? You played yourself." Ice-T. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, George Gervin, the Iceman, Ice-T. You played yourself. Next up on the list, Bill Russell. He could be considered the GOAT with 11 rings. He did win one as a player coach. And LL Cool J, who was responsible for coining the term, the greatest of all time. So next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Bill Russell, LL Cool J. You go listen to the whole CD, The GOAT. Next up on the list, Dr. J. Julius Erving. Now, he is personally my GOAT. I ain't saying the GOAT, but Dr. J was the smoothest dude back when I was growing up in the NBA, if I'm not mistaken. The first black athlete that Coke sponsored for the commercials with the afro. And when he jumped from the free throw line, ain't no half stepping, Big Daddy Kane. So next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Dr. J. Julius Erving with the afro, Big Daddy Kane with the high top fade, ain't no half stepping. Next up on the list, C. Vivian Stringer, first head coach to lead 3 different teams to the Final Four. I didn't say woman, I didn't say black. First coach to take 3 different teams to the Final Four. She is the original heartbreaker, Heather B. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, C. Vivian Stringer, Heather B., the heartbreaker. Next up on the list, Sweetness, Walter Payton. Is he the first football player on the list? He might be. Yeah, there's some football players on here because growing up, there were some iconic football players that we did want to be like. And when Walter Payton got the ball, he would give you the right flavor in your ear. Craig Mack. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Walter Payton, Craig Mack, flavor in your ear. And last but not least, for part 1 of the Ballin' MCs, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He had the most stoppable shot in NBA history. He won on all three levels. And when he got the ball in the post and shot the skyhook, he would kill at will. Ice Cube, who won on all three levels: group, independent, and in cinema. Last but not least on the list, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Ice Cube, kill at will. So that concludes part one of the Ballin' Them C's. I hope you liked it. It was definitely enjoyable listening to all the music to find the right song that matched the athlete. Part two coming up. And if you like it, hit the thumbs up, comment, share it with your platforms. But until next time, peace.